Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here with another Product Growth Leaders Conversations. Steve, we've been talking a lot with some friends of ours about agile transformations and SAFe and how they've had a major impact in the past decade or so on the role of product management. I mean, is it just me, or is product management different today than it was 20 years ago because of Agile?
Oh, I definitely believe that's the case. That with the introduction of Agile and the introduction of the product owner role, suddenly developers decided what product managers should do. And that is read aloud to developers from Jira.
Every 2 weeks. So
But you know, and also, I mean, I do see this pendulum throughout. I've been doing this for decades now. And sometimes product management's a business role, and then it becomes a technical role, and then it becomes a marketing role, and then it goes back to being a business role. And it swings back and forth. And it seems to me that I'm starting to see indications that it is swinging back to a business role as we see more and more teams say, you know, we don't want product managers immersed in development only, that we want to see product managers driving the business outcomes.
And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the Airbnb situation. It seems like one of those places where that was happening. So it's been a long time since we talked about product management and Agile. So we decided that would be a good topic to talk about right now, just because we're seeing a lot of conversations on that. And so on Monday, we put this question into the community. What are the keys to product management success in an Agile environment? And Danny, you came out right out of the gate, but said something I was not expecting. I'm going to keep my answer brief.
Yeah, this is a moment where I kind of just wanted to sit back and eat popcorn and just hear what everybody else had to say. And this is just based off of my experience, but I do not see a lot of organizations that are actually adhering to or have a solid understanding of what it means to be agile. They just say that they're agile. And so, as they say in the coffee talk skit in SNL, talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there has been this fad of agile, right? Even at the corporate level. I was in HR meetings and HR leaders were talking about Agile. And it's tough because I think there's a lot of, and a lot of our answers we'll get into. I think there's a lot of saying you're agile versus being agile are two different things, and where it can come from. Paul Hatala actually echoed this in his answer, said, first and foremost, admit that you're probably not in an agile environment. So that's sort of just a blatant way to look at it. May, you appreciated my capital A in Agile. Talk to me about where your head was, and share. You had some great thoughts on this.
Well, it's a very long answer, but like, there's many agiles, right? And the capital A agile is the religion or the framework, if you prefer. But it is the thing that people feel like they advocate for no matter where they are. So anytime someone's like vehemently defending agile as like we must do this thing, that's capital A agile because it is a thing that you do. Whereas if it's like, hey, we should do this because this is the impact, then they're defending lowercase a agile as agility, or as Paul Hatala alluded to. It is about the principles behind agile, or what we think of as agile today. So oftentimes I really highly recommend everyone to go back to the Agile Manifesto to think about where it all began, right? Because like it's not about following that to the T because it was written so long ago. It's about thinking about why this is important, why people still care about this today. It's about like, what do we want to be as an organization? How do we want to work? what kind of culture, organizational culture do we want to build together? Right. And so this is what I spend a lot of time thinking about. And I learned this from actually a PM at my old job. It's like he said, well, you have to read the Agile Manifesto, and we want to be agile. Like we should probably think about what it means to be agile, not like what we're told to do. And I think it's important to like just take a step back and think about that. Because anytime someone argues for capital A agile, if you talk to them long enough, they're really defending something that underlies that idea.
So in a way, it's people can call themselves agile, or people can actually be agile and act and behave with the principles of agile, almost like in religion today, right? You can call yourself one, but you could act like one as well. So you're
it's the difference between being religious and being spiritual.
Yeah.
Perhaps. But it's also interesting to note that the Agile Manifesto is agnostic. It's talking about, first of all, it's talking specifically about software, but it was created by some real thought leaders in development methodology, the early creators of DevOps, the early creators of Scrum, and they weren't talking about their method. They were talking about the unification of all of those methods under a common framework of principles, which is and much of it, frankly, I think much of it was written for internal IT as opposed to software vendors. But one thing that sticks out in my head is we don't care about the contract. We care about the outputs or the outcomes. If we find out that what the customer asked for is not what the customer needs, we want to embrace change instead of blindly going forward and saying, well, look right here, section 1.3.9.2, you specified that it had to be green or whatever, right? So it was a superset, it's like a creed, right? Of this is what we believe, and it's not a denomination.
Yeah, no.
To continue the religious metaphor.
Yeah, that resonates with me, and I think, Steve, you and I were reading an article by Steve Denning recently, where we talked about he was talking about how the real thing that's missing is the actual focus on customers, and how in the Agile Manifesto really was customer in, right? Not in. Too often we're seeing people who are agile still working inside out, not outside in. So it's something I thought, and I will tell you, May, you got, I think, our first mic drop ever in our comments.
I think it was the second, but okay.
I mic dropped you before too.
Okay, so is my mic better now?
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, something got moved. It must have knocked the thing. So mic drops and mic volume levels all come together in this same conversation. So now, as we move forward, Dominic, you said, as mentioned above, by our esteemed colleagues, wow, that's high praise, you would split agile and agility when talking about product management, empowering collaborative teams, prioritizing a clear background, continuous customer feedback, sort of echoing what I was just talking about with Steve about that customer in. Talk to me about
absolutely. And I would add one thing to what May just mentioned, on the why. It's a different why. It's actually, making sure, to me, it's what the key element, if we're working in this agile environment, is making sure that we're working on the right thing. In our role as product managers is to clarify that why for the teams to work on in this agile environment.
Yeah, and gosh, Steve, everything to me keeps coming back to that book, The Right It, right? And I Dominic, to me, it's so much that is part of our role as product management, is to make sure they're working on the right it, and then enabling and empowering them to collaborate to deliver that, right? Dominic?
Just say right, Dominic.
Maybe he can't hear us. Let's keep moving forward. And I hit the wrong button. I went too far. Let's go to some of the people who were hadn't answered on Monday with where we want to go. Clint, I'd love to get your take on this question. What are the keys to product management success in an agile environment?
Did you not see my post in there?
I saw you had a comment on the poll. We'll get to it when we talk about the poll, but not on the Monday question.
Yeah, I put it in there. So I don't profess to be an agile expert, but what I put in there was I tended to agree with the train of thought from the rest of the group that I think organizations don't really truly understand and drive the full concept of agile, and you have to be, you have to be very disciplined. You have to have perseverance, and you need to have cross-functional buy-in across the entire organization. But yeah. I do think there's elements of agile that even if you don't follow the whole agile process, that there's elements within agile that can still be a benefit, because a good part of agile is still better than a bad part of bad process.
Yeah, I love that. DJ, how about you? Where's your head on this?
Yeah, I submitted a last minute response, just kind of reflecting on my time at Fanatics. And so I sort of had a unique experience in that I was tasked by the VP of Product and Design to stand up an Agile Center of Excellence for a 600-person tech org from scratch. And so never having done anything remotely close to that before. But at the end of the day, I think there were two significant challenges. The first one is that although the VP of Product was my executive sponsor, there were a lot of headwinds from tech leaders, because it is and was an engineering-led organization, and so oftentimes it was a GSD type of get stuff done kind of approach. And so the appetite for work intake and planning was not really there. And so the other bit when I joined was also measurement and accountability wasn't top of mind. So the results of just getting stuff done and deploying without a lot of thought and planning, I just say planning, there wasn't a lot of accountability there. So that was sort of the first bit. The second was at sort of the team level. So as I started to engage with these teams, you're encountering the preconceived notions of what capital A Agile is. And oftentimes it was, people were like, capital A Agile is process, it's administrative work, it's heavy lifting, and the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so there was a lot of overcoming those preconceived notions and being jaded of past experiences with Agile. And so my approach there was working with the leads of the team, both product and engineering, and these are squads, pods when I say team, was to, one, sort of listen to their past experiences and then explain to them that, as has been said here, that Agile is a framework, right? You have self-organizing teams. We're not going just to apply Scrum or Kanban or Scrumban or whatever it is to them. We meet them where they are, understand their challenges, and then sort of apply those frameworks in a customized way. And that was layered on top of coaching and mentoring, and then also data collection of, I know there are different schools of thought in terms of velocity, but what I was tying it to was value delivery. But then also on top of that, taking regular, like weekly, the teams would take a poll of what their team happiness was. And oftentimes, like, as most of us have experienced, team happiness goes downhill very quickly when the work isn't understood, it's not planned, there's a lot of rework and throwaway work. And so what we were doing is sort of tying the elements of what we were implementing, tying that to Agile, and then also the outputs of it, and then making it transparent. So yeah, a lot of headwinds, a lot of challenges, but I think a lot of it comes down to understanding, appreciation of what Agile can be, and how folks can make it for themselves, and then selling that internally. So yeah, it was wild, but also really rewarding. Yeah.
I mean, that's what a big project. And You said a lot there, but two things really stuck out to me. One was you talked about the word accountability and pushing accountability. I'll use the term downstream,
Yep.
right? I think there's one of the biggest problems I see with people trying to be agile is they don't trust. They don't give that trust and give decision-making capability outward, right? Downstream, close to the customer. And I think that you can't be agile if you don't have that ability for people to make. If every decision has to roll back up and get approval, you can't be agile. The second one was how important it is for people to know what they're working on, understand the why, understand the passion behind it, and get people working. And we've had people tell stories about that type of stuff on this call before, where it's like if people realized they're saving lives or they're extending lives or whatever it may be, all of a sudden their work is more meaningful to them. But those two things, I think if we can even just strive for that, accountability and making people accountable, pushing decisions outward, atomizing it, as I like to say, in helping people know what they're doing, I think those two things would get us a lot further towards agility.
We were actually trying to push accountability upstream, right? Because obviously you need it downstream, but upstream was, of the initiatives that we've launched in the last year, how many of them were successful? How many of them required rework? How much of it was throwaway work? And oftentimes that was more of an afterthought at the leadership level, because it was such a high growth environment where it was like very little rear view mirror exploration and more like looking out the windshield.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
it does go both ways, doesn't it? Because if we're talking about, as Dominic said, making sure we're focusing on the right we have to have accountability to how are we doing about picking the right it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, DJ. What a great experience you had that you could share with us. Somebody was going to say something? I'm going to go to Clay then. What do you think, Clay?
I interpreted this. First choice, which is that we're not really. Wait, are we on the poll question?
No, we're still on the first question. What are the keys to product success, managed success in agile environment?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think that accountability is really important, and I've seen what DJ talked about happen, and we had an accountability problem in both directions, and we would roll things out and then business wouldn't do anything with it, and we realized we had to work more with them and say, look, if you're going to request something, you need to provide the onboarding, the training, so that when we deliver it, it actually gets used. So that became part of the plan. So they'd come to us and we'd say, great, you want this outcome, how are you going to make sure the tool actually properly gets used? And I think also the accountability is part of that too. If there isn't that accountability, then the trust gets eroded, right? So if there's not that, and measurement. So if we don't feel confident that when something is shipped, that we'll come back later and look in the rearview mirror, as DJ said, and say, all right, did we get what we wanted? Did we ask for the right thing? If you don't trust that, then it's going to be hard to let people make decisions downstream, because there's no feedback loop to make sure that the decisions were good.
Yeah, I completely agree. The number of new product introduction teams I've talked to just this year who launched products and never do follow-ups to see how those products met against what their pro formas or expectations were unbelievable. I mean, it's just I can't fathom not
too busy shooting to aim.
Yeah, exactly. May, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I kind of want to comment. I've been thinking a lot about this because it's on my resume, right? So the idea of trusting your teams to do something, holding them accountable, but also measuring them to see if they're doing the thing. Like, does it not sound a little counterintuitive? Like, isn't the nature of trust to say, yes, we've hired some really competent people and we trust that they're like looking into how to do things better, and like that is kind of the whole premise of agile empowered teams, trust, like hiring the right people, building the right teams. And so like when we're talking about accountability and metrics, I think it's more like you can measure the output, but I think it's I want to put like a big asterisk here to say like you're not measuring the actual team performance when we talk about metrics and output and accountability. We're talking about our collective output, our collective success.
Well,
Like,
I think
it's really important to make this differentiation.
Completely and totally agree, May. And as I look at it, there's part of to what DJ's point was, is we need to hold whoever is making decisions in the strategy and the product strategy accountable for, are they choosing the right things, right? But we also then have to hold them accountable for empowering the organization to deliver on those things, and then also look at how that they do at delivering it. It's all of us together. We're coming in. I'm going to go to Ari first because Ari's raised his hand 2 or 3 times. Then we'll go to Danny and then Clay.
Yeah, well, wow, there's not much more I can say to describe the situation and add to those skills than DJ and Clay did. And I raised it to May's first point to say what her second point, that, the measurement is not about measuring what is done. It's about measuring the value that it delivered.
Yeah.
And confirming and gathering evidence that your hypothesis or your approach paid off. And I think it also creates like a mindset that evidence is more important than effort. I think that's a good.
Yeah. Well, and I think there should be evidence before there's effort, right? We should be gaining validation in the market. Subtle hint, maybe we'll hear about that at the end of this call. We should be gaining validation before we commit to stuff to make sure we're working on the right stuff. But then we should also bring them in so they're part of it. They feel attached to it. Danny.
So this is very related to the element of measurement. You'll probably hear me talk about this a lot in our discussions as we move forward, but particularly with agile transformation, adoption, whatever we want to call it, that storytelling element is so critical and important to getting buy-in from other people across the business. And so in my mind, measurement is a really good way to elevate the work, the outputs, and help prove and tell that story. But not only that, it helps get people excited. When it's positive trending, wonderful. And if it's negative trending, it's a great opportunity to say, okay, this is not doing what we wanted it to do. Here's our plan of correction, course of action, and here's how we're going to make that happen. And that helps build that confidence and trust that it's not, right, it's not a one size fits all. It's not always going to work, but teams are willing to be adaptable and flexible and course correct when needed. But it helps reinforce like the flexibility and that adaptation piece of being able to maneuver and mesh with changes as they come through.
Yeah, you just put something in my head. It's been there before, but it just resurfaced. I mean, back to the original question, what are keys for product management success? Boy, we really should understand our hypotheses and assumptions. And to your point with course correction, right? We need to be continually picking up the signal, right? And learning and growing and be willing to course correct. That's part of the agile thing. And when they talk about it, we don't want to do a 2-year program and have everything have changed, right? In agile, because we're doing it incrementally, because we're doing it quicker, we should have better, quicker feedback on, are these the right things? Are things changing in the market? Can we change? And to Steve's point from earlier, make those change happen and not have them fight for it, but it says green in the specification. So thank you, Danny. That was a great point. Clay, you subtly raised your hand. Do you have something to add, or sort of have we covered it?
May and I actually discussed it in the chat. I was just counterpointing to May's point. She was saying, it sounded like she was saying we don't want to measure capacity because that sounds like I don't know, going in the wrong direction. And I was just saying, I think you have to measure so that you know if you're doing a good job or not. The critical part is how you use that measurement, right? It's like I tried to get developers to give estimates the last place I worked at, and I bent over backwards to say, I will never hold your feet to the fire and say, why didn't you meet the estimate? And in fact, part of the benefit of estimates is so I can go back to business and say, you asked for this thing, you thought it was going to be 3 days, it's going to be 3 months for this reason. Can we look at doing it a different way, or massaging the requirement?
That reminds me, Clay, of a contract that I put together for my team, which said, here's our working theory. Here's our plan, if you will, for the release. And by signing here, you promise to come tell me as soon as you know that this is not going to come true. As soon as you've looked at it and go, oh my gosh, this is, now that we're doing the design, we're going to have to redo the entire database. The promise is not you will do it or I will destroy you. The promise is I promise to come tell you if this information is no longer representative of reality.
I like that.
And May just put in the chat, this takes it back to psychological safety. We were talking about it last week, and Danny and Dom are going to help us make it a topic of the week in the future. But that's it. If people aren't willing to, don't feel safe enough saying that type of stuff. Wow. May?
One of the things we learned in Teachers College is the best way to create rules is to co-create them. So like, even if you have a classroom of 6-year-olds, you're like, okay, what are the rules we want? And then like, people love coming up with rules. They're like, yes, we must do this, we must do that. And then you start talking about the impact of those rules together. And they're like, okay, maybe we don't want that. And I think this lends itself actually quite well to teams, because like we talk about implementing these processes, and processes are rules. So if we talk about, hey, this is what we say we do today, but like, do we actually want to do this? Let's talk about like how this impacts us. Like, does this make a good team?
It's interesting how a lot of our conversation about how product management can succeed in an agile environment is about communication and trust in teams, than about Scrum and Kanban and whatever it may be. Ari.
I think people focus on what's tangible and what's legible, and trust is illegible. And people won't tell you if they don't feel safe.
Yeah, no, I get that. At first I'm like, boy, that doesn't sound like Ari. Ari, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, on the note May was making, in terms of people love to be included. One thing that you'll see a lot in these transformations or trying to introduce agile to teams is especially a lot of the stakeholders feel like they're losing power, they're losing influence, they're losing their ability to make decisions and drive things. And one thing that can be really successful in helping them understand that, hey, they're still involved and valued. B, this is about principles and not process, is to bring them into some of that idea sharing or solutioning or discovery. So they
give them some ownership.
And they have ownership. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, DJ talked a little bit about that with what he was doing when he did agile transformation. God, so many places I want to go. I want to get back quickly to the Clay and May outputs, measurements and stuff. And I had a VP of engineering at a client once ask me, what should I do to make my team, his engineering team, software development teams, more efficient, more productive? Because he's leaning into agile stuff. I said, become a sponsor of the strategic role of product management to make sure we're working, their people are working on the right project, right? Nielsen research over time has shown that 80% of new products fail, right? We've seen numbers, Steve's seen numbers from Clayton Christensen up in the 90s. Everything I see, and I never get people saying, oh, that's not the case, right? There's somebody who follows all Google product initiatives. In something like 70, 80% of Google product initiatives, somebody who's great at innovation fail, right?
Are those just software? Are those software products or hardware products as well?
Nielsen is more B2C products. I mean, so there's no one thing for wherever it may be, but for Google, it'll be more software, online, internet type products. But if we're at an 80% failure rate, you could get, how easy is it to get a 20% increase in velocity in your team or a 20% improvement of picking the right things, right? we can have a much more material impact by moving upstream to that. Gosh, Danny, there was something you put in earlier, and maybe we have to do as another one about a throwdown on where's the line between welcoming change requirements and principles taking advantage of. And I want to get there, but we don't have time today. But I'm doing a mental note so you remind me that we do it in the future. So I do want to go to the.
However, I can't let that one go by.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have a new backlog prioritization every day. It means new ideas can be entered in at breakpoints, not throughout the course of the day, so that it's still structured. You know, you still go through your sprint and you now have a new top priority because sales guy says he can close a big deal if only we have flashing orange instead of green. All right, fine. I'll put it on the top of my list. And the next time there's bandwidth available, work on it. But it still has to go through prioritization by product management, not straight into the development queue.
Yes, completely agree. And that's part of, again, another thing with key to product management success in an agile environment is maintaining that decorum, right? Maintaining that process.
Right.
And we're going to go there.
A topic for another time.
A topic for another time. And Danny's already told me she's putting a whole list of topics together. So I think we may outsource topic and question creation to Danny in the future. I do want to get to the poll. Our poll was, what is the hardest part of being a product manager in an agile? I still kept it capital A for May environment. You're not really agile. You don't understand the principles, getting full alignment cross-functionally to be agile. We're not market focused enough to enable agile. Role clarity and playbook expectations are not aligned. And other, it depends. We had 11% other, it depends, 11% role and playbook expectations not aligned. Both those the people who voted for those are not on the call. I want to go to Danny. Gosh, I was tough to choose between the top three. You chose you were not really agile and don't understand the principles.
I think you're going to be set up for failure as a product manager if you are in an environment that is not truly agile and or you are working towards something that you don't understand. I think I put this in the comment, like it has become such a buzzword. If we took a poll with a group of product leaders at any given organization, I have a hunch that each person is going to give you a wildly different definition of what agile is. But I'd be even more curious to hear them say what agile is not. That's really just the foundation of being set up for success is understanding what it is, and actually practicing it.
No, and based on the conversation we had for the Monday question, the answer to the Monday question, I actually thought that would be the winning topic, because there was a ton of people talking about how everybody calls it agile, but they don't know what it is. It's just a name. And so it's sort of, I thought that might be coming forward. I almost voted for we are not market focused enough, just to be provocative because of that article I mentioned from Steve Denning earlier. But, it's tough. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. May, I'm going to let you take the first pass on the getting full alignment cross-functionally to be agile. That's where I voted as well. Let me get your take.
It's hard. Like that is the hardest part. And I wanted to talk a bit about like actually implementing agile. So in my previous role, I had the glorious luck, like actually truly a good experience, of working with someone who is just an exceptional agile leader. So I had a counterpart on the engineering side. I was running it from the product side, and we worked together to basically build out what agile means at our organization. And it is difficult because everyone comes in from all of these different companies, especially larger companies, and you have these preconceived notion of what agile means, right? To the sales and operations and go-to-market teams, it just means it's a development buzzword to mean that you don't actually get a commitment on when you're going to deliver. To the development, it's like freedom, but also like process. To product, it's a lot of work, but also like we think this is a good thing. And to design it's where the hell do we fit in here? So I think it's really important to say to recognize that this is very difficult and understanding what it means to be agile, like really getting into the why in every single conversation when you do this change management. And also like, you know, this engineering counterpart and I, we are like very much aligned, but we still fought all the time about the core underlying principles of where we want to be. And that is hard, but like our conversations like helped us advance to where this organization should go, because that's how we balanced out our respective powers. And I think it's important to recognize that like building an agile organization is an ongoing process, but it's also a conversation between all the different teams, because it's about how does the organization work together. So
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but maybe the way we need to get agile to succeed is to take it out of development, where we also say, oh, it's agile is development, and make it the organization, and how we all have to be agile together, right? And we all have our places to play. It's not just a development methodology is agile, it's a organizational methodology that's agile with where we need to go. And, you know, as much as we sometimes bag on agile in the capital A and that we've been doing, to truly get agility, we all have to be aligned and working in a way that makes that happen.
There is a caveat to that, though. I just want to add that in. If you do make it organizationally agile, you'll never get anywhere. The reason why is because it just adds so much more complexity to it. Whereas if you maintain that this is the engineering framework, you use it as a primary source of influence that influences other teams to work better. And that way you can control, like, this is your domain and this is your range of influence, versus if this is your domain, you get nothing done.
I see where you're going, and again, we could probably debate on this forever. And for me, it's like I love this idea of distributing decisions and pushing them out downstream to the closer to the customer, closer to where the decision needs to be made. And maybe the word agile is wrong, but if we can create this decentralized organization that's empowered by a strong why and strategy and boundaries, and people know what to do and they have the psychological safety to make decisions, oh my God, but maybe that's a utopian society we're never going to get to. Clint, you also voted along with us for getting full alignment. What else would you like to add?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it. I mean, it's really, you know, to truly, when I worked at Pitney, we had agile, but it wasn't really 100% based on what the agile process was, right? They took the pieces that they liked and they jettisoned the stuff that they didn't like. So it's really, and to my earlier point, I mean, I think having some process is better than no process. So I'm okay with that. But again, I'm not a real deep in agile person. So I just don't have the clarity of feedback that some of these other folks do.
I get it. I want to go around some of the people who hadn't voted by the time when I took the picture. Start with Clay. Where would you vote? We don't need to go into the details, but where would you vote? You're on mute.
The organization, number one, the organization isn't agile. We're not agile. I can read that right.
Yeah, makes sense. DJ.
Yeah, I voted for the first one as well. You're not really agile. Don't understand the principles. My thought being, I take that a step further. It's not only do you not understand the principles, there's very little appetite for it. You think the organization thinks that you are good where you are. That's akin to, asking a fish to climb a tree, right? Like if there's no appetite for it, there's no appreciation for it, getting full alignment across the organization to be agile is going to be a Sisyphean effort.
No, I agree. And again, I almost voted for that one. But all of a sudden, with Clay and DJ coming in there, Ari, you might make it a tie if you go for that first one. Where would you vote?
No pressure.
No, I think I voted after you took this snapshot, so I'm going to keep myself honest to what I voted for. And I actually voted for the role clarity one.
Okay.
Bottom. And the reason for that was just, these are all so overlapping, and it was hard for me to separate one completely from the other. And I did that one just because, less about the playbook stuff, but more about the expectations. How should we work together? A stakeholder, a product manager, my team, how does working with agility change what I commit to, how I have conversations, who I include, how I involve? And I think setting expectations for that is pretty crucial, because while we think about Agile as a system, or you need to have certain reinforced behaviors at the individual. And expectations, that's hard to
completely. And that's almost like it's a twin with getting full alignment, right? It's just a different flavor of it. And I was, I'm going to go for I think it's Paul who always does it, right? The reality is it starts at the top. If you're not really agile, okay. If you want to get agile, you need to get full alignment across functionally of what it means to be agile. Then you need to get role clarity and playbook expectations set. Then you realize that you're not market focused enough, and you have to get there. They all come together. Steve, where would you vote, or where did you vote if you voted since I took the snap?
I'm going to vote for we're not really agile. I think I find it actually a little amusing when people refer to safe as safe agile. Like, I really, really mean it. So I'm going to use the word agile twice in the sentence, because the A in safe means agile, right?
Yeah.
And I think a part of that is, we're not really agile. And when you talk to agile zealots, they will say, well, the president and all the leadership and every employee in the company needs to be Scrum certified. And, that's such the equivalent of everybody needs to go to church, and it's the religious reference of earlier. I'm reminded of a verse from Hebrews. Faith is the evidence of things unseen.
Yeah.
We have faith in Agile that will solve all the problems, right? And you need to go read the principles. You need, right? Read your Bible.
Yeah.
And yet the Agiles are talking to each other. This is called preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah.
And so most of the organizations I encounter are actually doing what I call Agile, but we're doing Agile, but we're not co-located, but we're not doing stand-ups, but we don't send the decision-making down, and we don't let teams self-organize, and we're basically doing waterfall while calling it Agile, or what some people call Agile fall.
Agile fall is the one I always like to hear. No, I completely agree. And, I don't know, there's a really good book behind me called Turn Ideas into Product that really might be a really good thing for people to read, to learn how best practices of how to be product management and agile. And if I remember correctly, one of your key takeaways from your research, Steve, was those companies who went agile and made the product manager or product owner failed, and those who made a business analyst the product owner succeeded.
That's correct.
So maybe something we should have talked about in the beginning about what are keys to success for product management in an agile environment.
And one other rant at here, I'll even give you the here. People look back on waterfall with fondness. It's kind of like a lot of people look back on the 60s fondly, and you're like, wow, if you remember the 60s, you weren't really there. But they look back on waterfall and have completely forgotten that there used to be a thing, and there still is, called the chaos report, that reports on how successful companies are at the way they build products, and the results are dismal. And the latest report is from 2015. They said in a large size project, 18% of agile projects are considered successful. Only 18% are considered successful, large scale. But only 3% of waterfall projects are successful.
Wow.
And so there's a lot to be said for, Agile is getting results, and the command and control format of waterfall is the failure. And the bigger the project, the bigger the failure.
does that mean that, and I'm trying to do the math in my head, that agile fall success rate is somewhere around 12% or 11%?
I think you may have to subtract it instead rather than adding it or whatever.
Ari.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely efficacy to, an agile mindset and an agile model, 100%. I just wanted to, put the context of looking back fondly in waterfall. I don't think anyone would disagree that like the products built in agile are better than waterfall. But at the time also, like I feel like the goal was a little different. The market leaders were all efficiency driven, super focused on repeatable process procedure, and their goal was to do everything with maximum efficiency. I feel like the mindset has to change to more of a growth mindset now.
Yep.
Because that's what pairs well with agile. And if you're operating with an efficiency mindset, agile isn't gonna. You're gonna turn it into waterfall.
I'd be interested to see about how agile is Apple in their software development, because they still do one major release a year for their iOS or whatever, any of their operating systems. So that's a fairly waterfall. But my guess is they deliver it in increments, and it's agile in how they deliver it. And once they get into beta, they're even testing how does it work. And so I think there's some fallacies in release versus launch of what is agile and what is waterfall and how we develop stuff.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that too. There's a really good article. I don't remember who wrote it, but it's about how the iPhone was developed. And I agree, the way Apple builds doesn't feel very agile, but what this illuminated was there's a lot of optionality that goes on. They do a ton of things, and then they pick the ones that are successful and find out how to create a successful product. And I think iPhone was the result of that thinking. So it's not necessarily agile, but there is agility in learning in that.
May?
I think in order to do what you just described, you need the principles behind agile, because in order to be prepared enough to do more and cut off, and like that process of experimentation means shorter cycles and time to like analyze and do things that aren't just build. So I think like that is agile. Like no matter what your actual like release cycle is, as long as you're doing all the things that are wrapped around what we consider good product management or what development considers agile, like you need those aspects there in order to do experimentation. Like you can't do it's really hard to do experimentation in a waterfall environment.
Boy, Steve, I think we're getting a lot of lead up to what we should have as our topic next week when we talk about experimentation and tests and validation. So real quick, because we do need to get to the key takeaways, but I wanted to do almost a lightning round. I don't know if I can get to everybody, but how can product management become more, see what I did there, May? Little a agile, I underscored the little a, agile in our activities. I'm going to start with DJ, just a couple. What can we do quickly?
Boy, I usually need to think of these things.
We can do Zerberts.
So I would say, in the context of our conversation, one is better understanding the work. If you understand the work, you're more likely to be able to classify the value, deconstruct and slice the work thinner to deliver it faster. So I would say, in terms of lowercase agile, knowing the work so that you can deliver it smaller increments faster to get that feedback loop. That would be my initial response.
I love that. Danny.
To not repeat what DJ said, but to build off of it, be actively advocating for customer feedback and actually going out and getting it. I think that's pivotal in informing other things that you should be doing.
Love it. Clint.
I'm in agreement with both things that were just said. I think the customer element is important. Agile, you have to have that customer feedback in order to make decisions on whether or not you're going in the right direction or you need to redirect.
Love it. Ari.
I'd say thinking about problems versus solutions and caring about what is really happening, what is the problem.
This is a good list. Clay.
I can't add anything. These are all great.
Awesome. May.
Understand the organization around you, because if you understand what's around you, it's not only about the market context, it's about how your products actually get built and sent and like shipped and sold. So take the time to understand cross-functional agility, and it will help you in the long run.
I love that. Steve, any last thoughts before we move on to the takeaways?
Just real quickly, I feel like product management has always been agile, or good product managers have. They're always engaging with the market. They're always refreshing their mental models. There should be telling great stories about customer issues to inspire developers and designers and salespeople and marketers. But the key to that is a product manager who has been engaged with the market. Because if you're not the expert in the marketing, what the hell are you doing here?
No, I love it. Great conversation. Time for our key takeaways. What is your biggest learning or takeaway from this conversation, starting with Ari?
All right. Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaways is that this is everyone's having this problem. This is a hard problem to solve, and I'm not the only one feeling it.
Yeah, that's very much everybody struggles with this. Clay.
That work group contracts are a thing.
Steve's I actually use that well, because that's about trust and psychological safety, right?
Yeah, and done as a group. And done as a group.
Yeah, no, I love it. Clint.
Just getting a better understanding of, are we or are we not agile? And if we are not, what needs to be done to either bring us to that level, or just to make a determination that we're going to use some percentage of it and be happy with that and make sure that that's got value for the organization.
I love it. DJ.
Yeah, I think I'd echo it. Misery loves company. Like this is not a uncommon problem. And,
isn't that every conversation we have though?
Fair enough. Maybe that's just a common theme for all of us. Yeah, but
yeah. Awesome. Danny.
So my head's really at sharing, advocating, and educating more on the value proposition of Agile, and really just being relentless about talking about it and bringing it up in conversation at every opportunity until people start hearing it long enough and getting interested and excited enough about it to actually put some momentum and force behind it.
I had the one question I didn't get to was, what's the ultimate outcome we're looking for from being agile or from agility? And I think just like sometimes we struggle to talk about the value of product management to get people to support the strategic role of product management, I think we need to have that same lens of what is the value, what's the outcome we're trying to get from this. I love that, Danny. May?
I'm sorry, can I just, I'm going to step on May.
No, you're not. She's in Toronto. You're in Colorado. You can't step on her.
But I would say it's a combination. The other thing that upon reflection is this is both hard skills in terms of implementing the bits of capital A Agile, but it's also the soft skills in terms of how you approach the teams. And I'll turn that over to May, because I know she's a firm believer and representative of culture.
I just love the fact that you had a key takeaway for the whole call and a key takeaway for Danny's key takeaway. I thought that was pretty impressive. May.
Working thesis. Agile enables good product management, which enables Agile.
Ooh, it's circular. Or recursive. I like that. Steve.
Well, I actually answered it in my last answer. I thought I skipped a slide in my head, I guess. I'll stick with product managers who are expert in the market, help create agility.
Yeah, you and May seem to be on the same page there. For me, I'm going to go with what I had sort of my epiphany midway through this conversation, that we need the macro level of little a agility, right, across the organization. Each team in itself needs to figure out how to be agile, and then how to work with the other teams that we collaborate with and partner with. And that's how we create an agile organization, lowercase a, that can deliver the right things more efficiently and deliver better outcomes, because that's what we're trying to do while we're trying to do this. Great conversation. Dominic had to leave early. Ari, Clay, Clint, DJ, Danny, May, my friend Steve, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. Again, every week I learn, I grow. Thank you for doing that. Next week, validating product ideas. So we had some validation, we had some testing, we had some experimenting. Well, we're going to get into it. It's been a long time since we had this conversation. And for those who are on this call, they'll get to see it. If you haven't read The Right It, what an amazing book. It's really opened my mind to how we should and could be doing more validation, more testing, more experimentation. Definitely recommend that book for anybody who's out there. So next week, validating product ideas. And we do this every week. Monday, question goes in. Wednesday, we do the poll. Friday, these amazing conversations where we geek out on product management. We learn, we grow, we make friends. We just have a good time. So everybody, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation today. We'll see you guys next week in the community. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks so much.